Hi, it's Dan again, your biker in the kitchen. Usually I'm making some kind of food or doing something like that silly, but today I'm going to do something a little more serious. There's no real good information out there on YouTube or anyplace else about changing the oil or transmission fluid, primary fluid, on a Harley Fatboy. Lots of stuff about Sportsters and bigger bikes, but nothing for my older 2004 Harley Fatboy. So I'm going to change the oil myself and show you how I do it. I'm going to give you a disclaimer here. I am not an expert. I'm not a mechanic. This is my bike. I'm changing my own oil, and I'm showing you what I'm doing. If you follow these instructions and something doesn't go quite right, don't call me. It's your fault. I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. Alright, we're going to go over the supplies that we're going to need and the tools to perform this task. Again, we are making an oil change on the 2004 Fatboy. It's got the 88 cubic inch model engine. It's fuel injected. It's the B model. So this is basically as it applies to that type of engine. We are going to replace all three fluids with the one synthetic. I bought some Royal Purple, got 20W50. I bought 6 quarts of that. Really, I need about 5.2 quarts to fill it. It's 3.5 for the 3.5 quarts for the main crankcase. It's 24 ounces for the transmission and 26 ounces for the primary drive. So that just is a hair enough to make you buy 6 quarts instead of 5. And then we've got the K&N filter cleaner, so we're going to use that to clean our air filter. And then we're missing from the picture, we're missing the oil filter, which is in the car, and my girlfriend took off with the car, so that's not in the picture, but it's just an oil filter, FRAM. I believe it's the P6065. Is the correct model. As far as tools go, we're going to use 2 Torx. This large one is a Torx 50. That's to use to pull the cover off the air filter. And then this is a smaller one. It's a Torx 25, and that one is used for removing the bolts, the 5 bolts from the primary or derby cover. If you don't have torque wrenches, you got to get them. There's no other way to take those loose, so you need them. We're going to use 3 Allen wrenches. We got a 3/16, which is used to remove the plug from the primary. We've got a 1/4, which is used to remove the plugs from both the transmission and the crankcase. And then we've got the large 3/8, which is used only for removing the dipstick from the transmission. Many people will use a filter wrench, and there's all different kinds that you can go out there and buy, but quite honestly, when you pull a filter off a bike, it's never any good, so I just use a pair of channel locks. It works every time, whereas the filter wrench doesn't work every time if somebody puts them on there too tight. So careful use of a pair of channel locks will get the job done, and you don't have to go out and buy a special tool. Then we have our ratchet to drive the Torx. And I went into our kitchen without Tina knowing, and I took out 2 of our disposable baking pans that I'm going to use to drain the oil into. They're nice and flat, so they fit under the bike. And most of the ones you buy that you can use for real oil drain pans are too tall to fit underneath your bike. So that can be problematic. And then we have just a couple of rags too. There's going to be oil leaking, and I want to keep things wiped up as we go. So those are the items. I'll put a little costing list of what we spent on this right after this shot. One of the main questions, and a very basic question, but very important to know, that I see out there on the internet with no good answers, is where are the drain plugs for the Fatboy on the 88? They're not in the same place on other models, so let me show you exactly where to find them. Alright, I'm actually laying down here on the ground next to the bike on the right side, and I'm using the, so I can put this down, I'm using the front-facing camera. See what I can see under here. As we come under the bike, just forward of the rear tire, right in the frame, is your main drain plug. This is for your oil reservoir and the motor oil in the engine. Then as you move almost directly over on a Fatboy, you will see, I can't see very well from where I am, but you'll see your two shocks under there. And right in between the two shocks, as you go up, let me feel in between here. Right here. Moving to the right side of the bike under the primary. There is your drain for your primary drive. They're almost in a straight line across the bike, just right across the middle of the bike. Alright, so I'm ready to start. Sitting on the floor, I'm on the right side of the bike. I'm going to take the largest volume of oil out first, so I'm going to open the main crankcase and drain the reservoir and the crankcase of the machine. And I want to mention also, I did take a quick ride on the bike. You can probably still hear it ticking a little bit. So I did heat the bike up, and it's the oil should be thinnest and easiest to come out. So I'm going to put the Allen wrench on the reservoir plug, and I'm going to break it loose. And quite honestly, I did cheat because I'm doing this one-handed, so I broke it loose already. So it's not quite this loose. And I'm just going to drop that out of here. Sorry for the wiggliness of the camera, but I'm the operator and the mechanic here. Alright, it's pretty loose. Take the rest away by my fingers. And there comes the dirty oil. One thing to note on the drain plug itself, on the very tip, you'll find it's a magnet. And that magnet is designed to catch any metal shavings or filings or anything that would come loose inside your engine and stick to right there. So make sure you clean those off really good before you put it back in. You can see my oil was well used, and we're just going to let that drain for a little while. Okay, the Harley bike is supposed to, at least it says in the manual, that it can actually be drained on the stand. But just in case, I've stood it up, and I'm going to put it back down. We've done this once already, and we got a little bit of extra flow out. So I don't know if it was just something that was maybe caught on one side or what. But actually, I'm going to tip the bike opposite the stand also, just to try to get out as much as possible. I'm going to put it back over on the stand, and we'll keep filming. Okay, so the primary, or the crankcase oil is drained, and I put the plug back in, just so I don't forget to do that. I'm going to take these out one at a time. Next, we're going to go to the transmission. Alright, the first step in changing the transmission fluid is to remove the dipstick, which is located right here on the corner of your transmission. Takes a 3/8 inch Allen wrench, which is the biggest one in the ones that we took out. That broke loose first. It shouldn't really be on there very tight because it is just a dipstick. You don't want it to leak, but spin that off. And then just leave it open so that air can get through there. So when you pull the drain plug, it will drain properly. Alright, so what we're going to do now is the transmission plug, and it's up in between the two shock absorbers under the bike. On your soft tail you've got two shocks that are your suspension. And what I've done is wrap some plastic around the downside one, the one that's on the kickstand side, because gravity is going to take that oil towards that one. So just to keep it from getting covered with oil, we've wrapped a little plastic around it just to try to keep it clean. And we're going to drain most of the oil with the bike on the stand, and then we'll stand it up. Alright, one thing to I guess note when using the tool, the Allen wrench is an L-shaped Allen wrench. Most people are used to using the long part as the handle and the short part as the part that goes up into the bolt. But because of the depth we have to go here, we're using the long part up in between the two shock absorbers, and then we're going to turn on the small part. But because we have no leverage, I'm going to take a pair of channel locks and actually grip it before I break it free. And now that I have it loose, I'll just be able to take it out by hand now. And with my plastic in place, my pan underneath. Trying to keep my plastic out of my pan so I have the least amount of oil mess possible. And again, just like the engine oil, on the end here we've got a magnet to catch any metal shavings. And some metal shavings there is normal, so don't freak out if you see some. Mine seems to be pretty clean, but this is not the first oil change either. Alright, same as the crankcase, we're going to stand the bike up and see if we get any more oil out of the transmission. As you can see, you do. And if you have a stand, obviously, for an older bike, it's better to put it up on a stand. But this is the at-home way of doing it. I don't have a stand, so I'm just sitting on a bike. Alright, kids are playing in the backyard, so you have to excuse the extra noise here. We're down to the last fluid, which is going to be your primary drive, and that plug is here, and it uses the smaller 3/16 Allen wrench. So I'm going to go up underneath there, break that loose. That's the wrong way. Make sure you don't over tighten these things. Alright, once it gets down a little bit lower, you can spin the wrench 360, and out it comes. Then after that drains out, we're actually going to pull the cover off of this, and that's how you refill it. You can see of the oils, the transmission oil is the cleanest. The primary and the motor oil both pretty dirty. We're probably just a few hundred miles over our 5,000, which is the interval for and this one does have also, I don't know if you can see it or not, maybe a side some metal shavings on top of the magnet there. Yeah, close enough to focus. Maybe from a side angle. Make sure you clean those off. Don't put them back in your engine. Again, I'm going to tip over center. And the primary obviously brings the lowest. It's on the extreme of the kickstand angle, so I'm trying to counter that angle some. Alright, so to refill this, we're going to pull the derby cover off, or the primary cover, depending on where you are. People call it different things. This requires a special tool. It's called a Torx. There's different sizes of these. Harley uses them all over the bike, so if you own a Harley, you probably have a set of Torx. If you don't, you're not going to be able to actually do this until you run out and buy a set. This is a size 25 Torx, and we're going to pull these, there's 5 bolts here, and these are actually set to a specific Torx setting. I don't have a Torx wrench, so when we put them back on, we're going to have to be real careful because you can over tighten those, and there's a specific pattern that they go back on. So we're going to talk about that when we put this back on, but I just want to remind you right now that there is a specific pattern to putting them on. Alright, these are chrome parts, so you want to be real extra careful when you put your wrench in so you don't slip out and scar your cover plates. They're chrome. So get it started. I'm just going to take these loose first. Now that I've cracked them loose, I'm just going to take the Torx off the wrench so I don't scar anything up and just spin them off. And we'll just repeat that for all 5. Alright, so through the magic of television, all 5 have been removed. I'm just going to put those aside for the moment. Then we're going to pull the cover off. And that's just the cover here. Now there's the actual seal. And that's going to come off as well. Carefully, because we're going to reuse it. These are inexpensive. You can replace them every time. A lot of guys say they don't replace them except every 20 or 30,000 miles. So this one was replaced on the last service, so I'm going to reuse it. And basically now you can see inside your primary, and there's just no easy way to get the oil into this. There's actually a piece made that's plastic that fits in here and sticks out and lets you flow the oil in. I've got a flexible hose that I'm going to use, but there's still a good chance I'm going to spill some oil here, so we're going to leave the pan underneath while I fill this up. I've put the plugs back into all of my my cases, so I'm plugged, I'm tight, and the last thing we're going to do before we start putting liquid back into the machine is we are going to pull the oil filter, which I haven't done yet. That's on the front of the bike. So next step, oil filter. Alright, last thing is the oil filter. As I warned earlier, it would probably be on real tight. It was. I couldn't use the oil filter wrench to pull it off. That was a fail. I'm actually faking this a little bit as I've already loosened this up, but I had to use these channel locks to do so, and I've crushed the outer side of the canister just a little bit. Another old trick, if you get in real trouble, that I've heard people do, and this is a real mess, is to drive a screwdriver through it and use the handle of a screwdriver to loosen it up, but that's a real mess. You'll also observe that we put some plastic around this because some oil is going to drip out just to try to keep the engine clean. People put rags down. They make a $30 tool that basically goes under there and will actually funnel into your drain tray. We don't have one of those, so we're just going to break this loose. Using channel locks. to get it by hand now. I'm trying to keep my plastic in place. See oil dripping out already. The faster I can get it off and upright, the better off it is for the bike. Mess. Alright. And there I've got it upside down into the oil. It'll drain. We're just going to throw that away. We still got an epic fail on the plastic here, so we're just going to get a rag in here real quick. And when we fire the bike up, we're going to smell that oil burn a little bit. Alright, so we've got the oil filter off, we've got it cleaned up. There's a flat surface that the seal mounts against. Make sure you wipe that clean. And then also you want to lubricate this seal with some new oil. I see a lot of people dip their hands in the oil pan and put old gritty oil on it. I dip my finger in the new oil. You just need enough on your finger just to lubricate it. Just a little bit of oil filter trivia for those that don't know. The small holes on the outside is the oil coming from your engine, forced through the small holes, and it goes through the filter inside and then returns back to your engine out the big hole. So that's basically how an oil filter works, and everything bad in the oil's caught in the membrane. Alright, so we've got this lubed up, and we're going to put this on with our hand. We're not going to use any tools at all. So we're going to go back to the center here. Put it on, and you want to make sure you get that started straight. Alright, so you've seen me tighten it as much as I could with my just 2 fingers here. And this only needs to, once the seal makes contact, it only needs to turn a half to 3/4 of a turn more. So basically what I did is I put my fingers underneath and use I'm mostly right-handed, so I've got my right hand out here on the end and grabbing where the wrench would go, and I basically just turned it another half a turn, and that's tight enough. Stop right there. Do not use a wrench to tighten this up. That is tight enough. It will not leak. Okay. Now we're going to move on to putting the liquids in. Alright, so we need to make sure we put the right amount of fluids in, so I've gone to the Harley reference for the 2004 Fatboy, and for the engine oil and filter, the oil capacity is 3.5 quarts or 3.3 liters if you're on the metric system. And then the primary, the lubricant amount there is 26 ounces. And then for the transmission, the lubricant capacity there is 20 to 24 ounces. So we'll use a dipstick to check that. So first we're going to do the main crankcase, and we're going to put in 3.5 quarts of synthetic oil. Alright, we're moving on to the fluid. We're going to fill the crankcase first. I didn't mention earlier that you do need a funnel, so I've got a cheapy chugger funnel here. What's nice about this one is it is graduated. So I'm using single quart. If you're using a 5-quart container of oil, then this helps you measure the specific amount. This bike could take 3.5 quarts of oil, so that's pretty easy to measure. But it also takes 24 ounces of fluid in the transmission and 26 ounces in the primary. So that's a little more difficult to measure, but we'll be able to do so, using this funnel. So I'm trying to set this up. I moved the table close by, so hopefully I can do this one hand, but we're going to find out here. Alright, it's pretty boring to watch somebody pour 3.5 quarts of oil, so we'll probably just pour one for you here and then move on. On the Fatboy, the oil goes here into the crankcase. We've got our hose opened up here, so it should just flow in. And this is the purple oil. It's a nice thing about using synthetic. The 20W50 will work in all three of your compartments. It's a little thick, so it'll take some time to go down. And we'll come back after we do the 3.5 quarts. So I don't know how good the shot of what I was doing from over there was coming out, but this is again putting it into the main reservoir. This is big enough any funnel will do, but this vinyl hose on this funnel will come in handy when we're on the other side of the bike trying to put the oil into the primary drive. You'll see that later. And that's the end of the 3.5 quarts going down into the end of the funnel now. So the crankcase has been properly topped off. We'll check it after we ride the bike a little bit with the dipstick, just to verify, but it is the correct amount per specification is in there now. Moving on to the transmission. As I was talking about earlier, another real benefit to having this funnel, and it's a little difficult to see, I don't know if it'll focus or not, but I need 24 ounces of fluid for the transmission, and I'm right at the 24 ounce mark, so that's a little hard to pour out of a quart. And again, down here is where your dipstick is, right on the corner of your transmission. Put the oil right in there. And just to demonstrate, and we've got the purple stuff going right down into the transmission. Alright, and the final step here, we're on the left side of the bike now. And we're going to go down to the primary cover where we've removed the primary cover, also called the derby cover. And the oil actually just goes in to this slot. On the top above the clutch here, it's a little more, there's a little more gap. So if you have a funnel hose like I do, I'm actually going to put it in there and let it flow down. There is a tool that people get that actually covers the lower portion of this, and it kind of sticks out like a tab, and then you pour the fluid down on top of it. I think it's just as easy to put a funnel into the larger gap here and let it flow. I don't know how well we can see that, but we've got the funnel going here. The primary drive gets 28 ounces. 26 ounces of Alright, so I've kind of pre-put on the primary cover, or the derby cover. It's actually still loose, but I put the seal on and I put the screws in, but they're just in kind of finger tight. I'm going to just tighten them up a little bit more, still again not to scratch the surface, but you don't want to put any tension on these because they, like a wheel of a car, they need to be torqued. And really I should be using a torque wrench. The manufacturer's spec is 80 to 100 foot-pounds of torque on these bolts, so you definitely don't want to over-torque them. So you see I'm not putting any tension on them all, I'm just tightening them up. The other thing is there's a specific pattern that they must be tightened in, which I guess I just said, like the wheels of a car. So we're going to go 1, then down here to 2, this will be 3, this will be 4, and this will be 5. So I'm going to now use my wrench. I'm not using a torque wrench, so really I've got them kind of finger tight. I'm going to maybe take them a quarter turn beyond where they are. 1, a little bit more, 2, 3, 4, 4. And 5. Tight but not too tight. A lot of people will also tell you to put Locktite on those threads. My bike didn't have it. I didn't put it on this time. I don't disagree with that. Thread locker or Locktite, I think is probably a good idea. I didn't have any, so if I have a leak, we'll find out. But I don't think I will. There was none on my threads previous to this, and that completes the process. Alright, we're going to also, as part of this service, we're going to change, or not change, but we're going to clean the air filter. So that in the center here just comes off. There will be this to remove the cover, and then there will be 3 bolts behind it holding the filter in place. So we're just going to take our Torx wrench, this is a Torx 50, and loosen that up. That gets the cover off. You want to clean the inside of that out. Get the dirt out of there, and you got your seal around there. And then inside there are 3 more Torx holding the filter actually on. So we're going to pull those real quick. Again, these are the Torx 25 that takes out the smaller screws. They're quite long because they hold this bracket on, and they go all the way through and hold the air filter on. So we'll put all that right up here on the seat so we know where it's at. And then the air filter just pulls right off. There are 2 lines that connect right there. So you can see it's pretty dirty. And we'll clean up this area here. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So I'm going to lay this on a table. I've got a plastic bag under it. And I'm going to spray the K&N cleaner on it. I'm just going to give it a liberal spray all the way around. Spray it on top. And I'm going to do the best I can to spray the inside also. Alright, so I've wiped it down. It's probably sat 10 minutes or so. So we'll take it over to the hose and wash it off. I wiped off the inside of the cover there with cleaner, and also the inside of the connection point to the bike itself. So now we'll just take it over in the rocks here. Kind of the hose point of view. It's actually best if you can wash it from the inside out. You don't want to wash the dirt into the filter, you want to wash it out of the filter. And I know that's not the greatest shot in the world, but I also don't want to get my phone any closer to the water. Alright, now we're just going to set it out here in the sun to dry. It's a good thing about Arizona sunlight is it doesn't take very long to dry something. We'll come back and check on that. Alright, so we're going to put the air filter back on. It's dried out. And I can't do this with one hand, so we're going to use the table there as a tripod. Sorry, it's not the greatest shot in the world. First, I'm going to connect the two vacuum lines. Let's just slide over the nibs there. Make sure you get them all the way on, though. And we're just going to tighten these up. You don't need to get crazy with tension on these, but you don't want them to vibrate loose. Some people do put a little bit of blue thread grip or Loctite on this just to keep them from vibrating loose. You can usually tell if they do vibrate loose because your cover will rattle some. This is also the mounting for the cover. Okay, that's mounted. Now I'll switch to my Torx 50 wrench. And we'll put the cover back on. And that's a nice new clean air filter.